one of the things that's interesting about the whole conversation trope is that it begins kind of like, say you have a poem and you have an epigraph. You structure it in such a way, the first few paragraphs, as if that can just play off through the whole chapter, and not only the whole chapter but the whole book. You have uh, little paragraphs that lead into that conversation, and the conversation becomes the de facto narrative.
Yeah, and a lot of times in works from Tumbleweeds, not Tumbleweeds, from Vincetti Brothers on, uh, I'll have sometimes long, almost novella length pieces, 12, 15, 18,000 words that are long short stories or almost short novellas where a narrator in the story is telling their own story. And the thing is though is uh, the stories, the way the people narrate things sometimes seems flat, and they're unaware of what they're really talking about. I use the example of you can have characters at a ball game talking about baseball, but they're really talking about something deeper. And the characters, the key to that is not to be so artificial that you have the characters talking intellectually or psychologically or philosophically that they know what they're talking about, but have them skimming things that they're not particularly aware of. They may think they know A, B, but they're talking about not only A, B, but C, D, E, F, and G as well. But they're not aware of those last 4 or 5 components of what they're talking about in the context of the narrative, that they're living in their moments. We as the reader can see what's going on about them and can see larger than they can. And so that works even if you have intelligent characters, but it's especially good when you have characters who are pretty dopey, like Gino, the main character or the main in story, the main diegetic character of the Vincetti brothers, as opposed to Manny Cole, who you could argue is the main character. Uh, but the main diegetic character of Vincetti brothers is Gino Vincetti, and he's a dope. He's described as too short for his age. He's ugly. He doesn't have a way with girls. He's violent. He attacks people. I mean, he's a real psychopath. I think that I have a few early scenes where he's torturing animals or relentlessly beating people for no reason. I mean, he's basically an animal. And if the Vincetti Brothers was a film, it would have to be black and white. Um, the later book, A Norwegian in the Family, would be bold 1960s Technicolor, but this is something that has to be a black and white kind of world. Gino is someone who goes through things, and other people notice things, but Gino himself is not. He's more than just a symbol for something. He is realistic, and there are things where he's symbolic when he's rebuffed at a hotel, which is also taken from the Rocco film. But I do more with it than the film does. In the film, it just serves as a plot point to show that the brothers are looked down upon because they come from a different part of Italy. With Gino, there's a deeper psychological thing because he's there with a girlfriend who eventually leaves him because he's too violent. He's from the wrong side of the tracks or whatnot. So when you're doing conversation, you have to be realistic, and that sometimes means people will go and or they'll change mid sentence. I try to get that, but I also have them try to point out things, and even when they try to be poetic or philosophic, they may fail, but if their failure is the point. And so that's a lot of the reasons that most dialogue fails. Jessica, for example, my wife, who when she does her dialogues in her book, she has more Bergmanian type characters. She has very few working class characters. Mostly they're intellectuals or artists. And so when they're talking, they can talk more comfortably about things and come off a bit more natural talking about philosophic concepts or artistic concepts. I tend to prefer to do it with lesser characters, although I do have some intellectual characters here and there. In my current book, I'm just working on a salon scene where I have some real life celebrities of the 60s and 70s like Susan Sontag or Alan Tate, who are engaging in conversations with people. But when you're dealing with lower level people, it's good to have them not know particularly what they are really talking about when they think they're talking about something else. And the total immersion factor is to get in that so that a lot of the little plot points that come out are things that stick with you, so that 200 or 300 pages later, if you re-encounter a character, let's say if you have a character that you meet at a party and he has a particularly intense conversation with someone about something, when you re-encounter this character 200, 300, 500, or 1,000 pages later, in the case of something like a Norwegian in the Family, you know this character, and because the conversation has stuck in your mind so much and it's so realistic, you have that feeling like, oh, you know this person. It's not just a character coming back to serve a plot point. It's, oh, I know this person, and it has an emotional effect on you, even though you're using simply intellectual techniques to do it. So the idea of total immersion is generally to soak one in, so that when you're reading it, it's like when you're watching a film, a great film, if it involves you so much, even if you're watching on a television screen or a big movie screen, you feel that you're there and that the screen has somehow swallowed you, and that you have passed into the screen, like in one of Buster Keaton's most famous films, the title of which I forget, but or in the Woody Allen film where Mia Farrow goes up, the Purple Rose of Cairo, I think it is, where she goes up onto the screen. That's the idea, is to get so that you forget that, I mean, yes, you're reading, but you forget that you're reading, because when a character says a joke or something, you can visualize. When I'm writing some of these long scenes, though, I have found that I'm not really thinking. It's like they're playing out. If I have characters and I know what the characters are like, I just have to put them in a situation. Character A has this trait, character B has this trait, character C has this trait. Here they are, and they're driving in a truck together to go to Yankee Stadium. What then unfolds is going to be natural, because you know them so much, you know the situation, that they can only react in a certain way. So that's the genesis, or what the technique tries to do.